So if you walk into the Strong Middle School band room for a rehearsal, in every rehearsal you're going to hear two phrases, guaranteed. They might be written or they might be said out loud, but two phrases every strong musician will hear. Well, the first is, I love you all, because I do, and that's self-explanatory. Any teacher in the audience knows what I'm talking about, but your kids need to know that you have an affection for them, hands down. The second thing I always say, and that I always have written, is that there is beauty in the struggle. Now that takes a little bit more to unpack, and that's kind of why I chose that message to do this talk on, which I thought was pretty interesting. But if you think about the word struggle in general, and we'll do a little audience participation. So just shout out some, first thing when you hear the word struggle, what is a word that you think of? Go ahead.
Pain.
Pain.
Anxiety.
Hard. Anxiety.
Oh.
Oh, not even a word, just a grunt. I love it. Anything else?
Frustration.
Frustration.
Growth.
Growth. Okay.
Yuck.
Yuck. Okay. So in all of those things that I just heard, there was one positive connotation associated with the word struggle. All the other words were very negative, dark, and kind of filled with despair. And that's why I want to focus on the word struggle. Because I think if we, and this is an education term, but if we reframe that word and use struggle as not something that we despair over or something that we fear, and that's the secret, fear. Fear is the most, in 10 years of education and 12 years of military service, fear is the greatest obstacle that I see in everyday life. Now, if we reframe that word struggle, I have seen results that are beyond words, words that you can't describe, words that only something like music can provide, because it's not something that we can vocalize, it's something that we feel. So that's the goal, is to try and reframe the word struggle for all of my students so that they can learn something more about themselves by embracing what they know is coming. How many of you right now have gone through a struggle in your life? Raise your hand. Go ahead. It's okay. It's okay. And you know what? 12 and 13-year-olds, they're going to go through it too. If they haven't yet, they're about to. Middle school is not the greatest place for a lot of kids. Yes or no? All right? When I go and say, like, I get my hair cut and they ask, what do you do? Oh, I'm the middle school band director. Oh my gosh. Can I buy you a drink? That's what they ask. And so that kind of mentality is what I also want to shift. Because if the kids go into middle school thinking that way, that's a problem, right? Because instead of saying at the middle school level, this is going to be the worst experience of your life, what if we said this is the opportunity of a lifetime? What if we said this is where you're going to find out who you really are? So my mission is to reframe the word struggle and then try to apply it into individual growth, and the perfect vehicle for that is music. Now, I don't have slides. I have zero data. and even educators, administrators, we love data. All right, we love that numbers tell us what is true, what is fact, what is false. I have none of that. But I'll tell you what I do have. I have stories. I have anecdotes. I have feelings from kids. I have expressions on their faces that will never go away. And to me, that's the only truth I need. And that's the only truth that will keep me at Strong at 6 o'clock in the morning welcoming those kids. Because it's worth it. And I've seen the results. So, as my kids would say, Mr. Fitz, you're saying a lot of stuff. Where's the proof? So, my proof is in basically a couple of anecdotes that I'll give you. Okay, anecdote number one. I serve in the 102nd Army Band, okay? I've served in the military, went through basic training, and I have about 12 years. I'm a sergeant in E5. A sergeant means that I have soldiers underneath me that are my responsibility. Now, the other thing, as a musician and an Army bandsman, I get to do two amazing things a lot of times. I get to participate in what's called funeral honors, which is where they render honors to a service member that has passed away. Okay, so in that funeral honors, there's a moment after there's a rifle salute where taps is played, and then a flag is folded and presented to the next of kin. I've had the privilege of folding the flag and also being a part of those ceremonies where people that I respect a lot have passed away. Now, the interesting thing is, that's a moment of struggle. Would you agree? Absolutely, right? Especially for that family. However, after the rifle salute, the moment the taps is played, if you look at the family, there's a moment of peace, there's a moment of recognition, and there's a moment of acceptance, and there's a moment of pride. And you know what that family's doing? That family's leaning into that struggle. That's exactly what they're doing. And the Army knows that that's why they play taps. It's to give that family a chance to lean in. Because that's a defining moment right there. They could do this, or they could lean into that struggle. The other thing that I get to do as a National Guardsman is to welcome troops home from deployments. I've done it in Fort Campbell, welcoming the 101st Airborne. I've done it in Tennessee, and I've done it here in Connecticut at Bradley. And the amazing thing is that when troops come off from Iraq or Afghanistan, and the first thing as they get off the plane, you know what they hear? If they're lucky, an Army band. And why would they do that? Why would they pay for an Army band to come and welcome those troops home? It's so that those troops can lean in. Because they've just had an experience that is indescribable. And when we play the Stars and Stripes Forever, which some of those soldiers probably don't even know, it doesn't matter. Or if we play Gonna Fly Now, as they're walking off, that allows them to lean in. And that's what this is all about. And that's why I think I use some of that energy from the Army in my classroom, because I see the results. You can see the soldiers as they deplane with their M16s or M4s with a rucksack that weighs more than I do, that have just been on maybe a 6-month, maybe a 12-month, maybe an 18-month deployment, and they're touching US soil for the first time, and I get to help them lean in. There's a tremendous amount of power in that. Okay, so now, away from the military side to the public education side. Okay, Nate. So I was the wonderful introduction of being punched in the face on the first day of school. Okay, true story, it did happen. We don't need to go into that. Not really, I didn't have the tools to do music education at that time. And that was one of the results. However, my second year of teaching, I met a student named Nate. Nate was a baritone player and wanted to be in jazz band. And baritone's a tough instrument for jazz. And I was like, yeah, we can kind of fit the jazz, the baritone for the jazz band, but it's going to be a struggle. But what might be nice is if you play like a saxophone, I can really help you there. We'll start it from scratch. And he's like, yeah, all right, I'll pick up the saxophone. So Nate had kind of a tough home life. And so one of his escapes was every day after school, we would do an hour private lesson on the saxophone. And I heard some of the worst sounds you could possibly imagine. And I just started doing 4th grade band at Lyman, and so like I'm in that struggle too, and like I know, and it's no fault of theirs. It's brutal. It is a tough instrument, and they're trying to make a sound any way they can, And you hear the result. I'm sure some of the parents right now know what I'm talking about. But Nate Edwards stayed after school every day for 2 years, okay? And Nate Edwards leaned in to his struggle. Mastering an instrument, dealing with the stuff that he had to do outside that was completely irrelevant. So music was his escape, and he leaned in. And I leaned in with him every day after school for 2 years. Fast forward, 8th grade. We did a jazz festival at Central Connecticut State University. Nate Edwards took a solo. Blew the judges away. They gave Nate Edwards a scholarship, all right, to attend a jazz camp for 2 weeks, free of charge. So he went, changed his life. Then he went to high school, was in the jazz combo, was in the jazz band, was going on this path of tenor saxophone greatness, right? So then he calls me up, Mr. Fitz, I'm at Western Connecticut State University. I'm opening for Kenny Garrett. Can you believe it? Can you make it? Absolutely, Nate, I'll be there. So I went. I saw him open for Kenny Garrett. He played flute, he played tenor sax, and he swung like crazy. He's playing circles around me now. Fast forward, 2 weeks ago, Nate called me, Mr. Fitz, graduated WestCon. I know, man, I'm so proud of you. Hey, I'm leading my own jazz combo at Black Eyed Sally's in Hartford. Can you make it? Absolutely, Nate. I'll be there. He leaned in. It doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter, and it's not, and I'm not saying it's about being a professional musician. That's not what it's about. It's about leaning in. Nate found out who he was after school in those lessons, in the struggle of the technique of the instrument that is brutal. That thing is brutal. You have to tame it. It's true. And in that struggle, he learned about himself, and he learned about who he was going to be as a human being. And he's a better person because of it. Last story. When I was in 4th grade, Mr. Bardo, there was a big desk, not much of a music program where I grew up. Anyone know Ellicottville, New York? All right, that's what I'm talking about. It's literally a stoplight. That's all it is. And we had a very small music program. Mr. Bardo was a teacher, and you went up to pick your instrument, and Mr. Bardo was there, and I was going to be a drummer. All about it. All about it. I love the drums, love the drum set. That's my passion. However, I also had a crush on Kristen Hintz. Okay, 4th grade. Kristen Hintz went in the line behind me, all right, or ahead of me. So I follow her, and then as soon as she opened her mouth, she's like, Mr. Bardo, I want to play the saxophone. So does Mr. Fitz. Right? So, immediately, drums are in my past. I'm going to be a saxophonist. So, fast forward, in one of the very poor music educational situations that I had Kristen Hintz to guide me, okay? So we kind of learned the saxophone together. We were both pretty terrible at it, but I grew a passion for it, and I looked up to her so much for her guidance and her, I don't know, she was like, to me, she was like the greatest person in terms of individuality and in terms of kindness. And I always wanted to try to emulate that. And even though she wasn't really into the saxophone and I was, it didn't matter. I wanted to emulate that kind of presence that she had. And so, fast forward, I'm going to be a music education major. And my school was like, we don't even know where to send you. I don't even know what that means. Like, I remember talking to the guy, and she was like, your science grades are good. Like, have you heard about genetics? Like, I think that's a field for you. And I was like, no, I want to study music. And they're like, you got nothing. So I had to research, and I went to music schools, and I didn't get in. And I was getting denied from all these places. And the only person, along with my parents, that stuck by me was Kristen Hintz. She's like, don't give up. Don't give up on that struggle. It's worth it. You can do it. So fast forward, senior year in high school, October 29th, 2000. Kristen Hintz was killed in a car accident. Rocked me. Gave up the saxophone, gave up everything. Didn't want to play, didn't want to do anything. And then I had a choice to make. there was my struggle. I lost the only person that really believed that I could become a musician. And so, and I tell this story to all my students because I had a choice to make. I could shrivel and I could go in, or I could lean into that struggle. So I leaned in, and I practiced like crazy. And I got into the only school that would accept me. And he's like, do you know how bad you are? My first saxophone teacher. He's like, you are so ill-equipped, but I'm going to take a chance on you. Dr. Keith Young. And he did. And I got my undergrad in music education. And then I realized that there is a whole world of music outside of this stoplight in Ellicottville, New York. It's incredible. They have whole buildings based on music education. It's crazy. So I leaned in further, and I practiced harder. And I got into a master's program at the Hart School of Music. I got to study with Carrie Kaufman, who's now also the saxophone teacher at Yale. And these incredible things started happening to me. I got to play with Smokey Robinson. I got to play with all these amazing artists. I got to play in a salsa band in Pittsburgh. Like, incredible things started happening, and it was because I leaned in. And so, you're right. I don't have any proof. I don't have any data. But I have all the stories. And I can tell you at Strong Middle School, I see them. And at John Lyman, even. Even at the 4th grade, I can see kids that lean in. And I will help them lean in every single day that I go to work. So, I'm going to read you one more quote, if you don't mind. And this is the quote that I put. There's a thing on at Strong called Step Up, where they get ready for high school. And the 8th grade band, either a small ensemble, or they all play something. Maybe it's Amazing Grace, maybe it's something that fits the band and that fits the environment. And I put this quote up every time right before they play. And it kind of encapsulates this entire speech. So I'm going to read it verbatim because I think it's that important. Now, the kind of strange thing is that this quote was written by someone that doesn't really help my cause in terms of middle school being this amazing, incredible place, because he so aptly describes what I think the struggle is in middle school. But when you hear who wrote it, Stephen King wrote it. But now, it has nothing to do with horror, but just take a listen to this. We did not ask for this room or this music. We were invited in. Therefore, because the dark surrounds us, let us endure hardship to be grateful for plenty. We have been given pain to be astounded by joy. We have been given life to deny death. We did not ask for this room or this music, but because we are here, let us dance. So, an open invitation, room 211, Strong Middle School, the Lyman cafeteria where we rehearse. I don't know. Everyone's invited. All right. I'll be dancing with my students. I'll be dancing with my wife. I'll be dancing with my daughter, who's 2, on Monday. And you're more than welcome to join us. There's beauty in the struggle.